All right, YouTube, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome into week number 10 in the NFL. And we're starting things off with Thursday night football. Denver Broncos taking on the Las Vegas Raiders. In today's video, I'm going to dive into this game. We'll take our time and break it down. I'll give you my prediction on the side. I'll give you my prediction on the total. We'll talk about any other plays like player props that we like within this game as well. And we do have a handful of them. But as always, guys, make sure to keep an eye down on the pinned comment of this video. That's where you'll find all of my final plays, so I'm actually rolling with myself. If that does interest you, if you do want to fade me, all of that is absolutely free down in the pinned comment. All right, YouTube, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. I tell you guys I'm a dummy all the time. They don't suck. They've just been sucking. Get them down to -3, 4 more juice than Jose Canseco in his prime. Tell me you're new without telling me you're new. So don't go jumping down my throat in the comments, right? If you want to fade me, or if you do want to ride me, this still leaves a bad taste in my mouth, right? And remember, more chins, more wins. Now, in terms of how we did in week number 9, it was our second, and I guess I am proud to say this, it was our second losing week. We're through 9 weeks now in the NFL, and we've only had 2 red weeks. That is absolutely awesome. But the way that we had a really bad losing week, it does leave a bad taste in my mouth, as we do say in the intro, right? So Thursday night football, we go 2-2, a little bit off the top, right? Same thing with Sunday. We go 2-3, lose a little bit there. But Monday night football, check this recap out. We had one win. It was CeeDee Lamb over 24.5 receiving yards. Other than that, squat. I mean, 1-6 in Monday night football. Let's hope we can put that behind us. Hopefully, right? And forget about that and move into a nice week number 10, because that was god-awful, you know what I mean? But guys, go ahead, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Let me know all of your favorite plays down in the comments. Maybe it'll help me out. That last time we were talking football, we go 1-6 in that Dallas and Arizona game. Big yikes. We need some help in the comments, but also I do just love reading and interacting with your plays down there. And I tell you guys all the time, we're building an awesome community. You're helping out a bunch of other people that are looking for additional plays or looking for ways to kind of attack lines and stuff like that. So drop all of your insights down in the comments. And like I said, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. But let's jump into this one here. We got Denver taking on the Raiders. Right now, Denver, 9.5-point favorites. That total sitting at 42.5. I will say these two teams are on 2 different paths right now, right? Denver coming into this one after 6 straight wins. They're now 7-2. Now, CJ Stroud did get injured, and a lot of people have said in that 18-15 win by Denver that, you know, the Texans probably should have won that game if Stroud stay healthy. But you know what? Let's give credit where it's due. 6 straight wins, 7-2, atop the AFC West division. Speaking of that division, you got the polar opposite, the team that's at the bottom of the division in the Raiders, 2-6 on the year. They're coming off of a tough one against Jacksonville in overtime there, but yes, they're 2-6 and at the bottom of the AFC West. In terms of injuries, a few pieces that we should definitely note here. So Pat Surtain missed last week. He's questionable in this one. We'll talk about that a little bit more in depth when we get into the Raiders offense versus the Denver defense and, you know, the passing attack specifically, but that's huge to keep an eye on, right? Definitely do your own due diligence. At the time of recording, he is questionable. Brandon Jones, free safety, questionable. Riley Moss, cornerback, questionable as well. And interestingly enough, Will Lutz missed Tuesday's practice due to illness. I'm not sure if that's going to keep him out or what the illness is, but I do think it's really important if your kicker can't go. It's definitely like one of the, at least in my opinion, harder like plug and play type of positions. Now on the Las Vegas side of things, free safety Polamalu is questionable, as is defensive tackle Adam Butler. But I think the biggest news, and it's not necessarily an injury, but they did trade Jacoby Myers, their wide receiver 1. Is he receiver 1? Maybe not. That might be Bowers. But Jacoby Myers no longer in the black and gray there, black and silver, whatever. So definitely worth noting. Again, we'll talk about that a little bit more once we do get into the Raiders offense, but let's start with Denver's offense here, and we'll start with Bo Nix. Bo Nix has had what I would consider a good but up and down season. Even just looking at his game logs, you can kind of see that, right? But in this spot, I do think he's in a decent enough situation. This Vegas team is going to play a ton of zone, right? You could see his completion percentage and interception rate and yards just in general do get better against zone. But the biggest thing to note here would be the lack thereof of pressure. Bo Nix, 5.8 yards per attempt against pressure. below 50% completion rate, 2.6 interception rate, and check this out, his DVOA and EPA drastically drop against the pressure. The fact that he's not going to see pressure, I do think bodes very, very well for him. On top of them, the Raiders being 30th in both pressure and blitz, they also are sitting at the 25th ranked team in terms of adjusted sack rate, 29th in completion, in clean pocket percentage, and then QB hit percentage, 27th. So yeah, that's not all that great. It is somewhat shocking / alarming to see those numbers because they have one of the best pass rushers in the league, Max Crosby, but he just can't be a one-man wrecking ball all of the time, right? And I don't know how great he will be in this game because this is a good protect the quarterback offensive line in Denver. Best adjusted sack rate against, 6th best in terms of preventing pressure, 5th highest clean pocket rate, and 2nd fewest in QB hits. So for all intents and purposes, yeah, this is a Denver squad that probably should be able to protect Bo Nix, give him some time. And again, let's not forget that we're going to see Las Vegas play zone. You want time in the pocket to be able to find those soft spots in the zone. So I think Bo Nix will be good to go here. Another little factoid would be that this is a Bo Nix and Denver team that they do like to target the out wide receiver, and Las Vegas is like bottom 10 in EPA per target, DVOA, yards per route run, success rate, all that, right? So out wide receivers should be in a decent spot here with Nix, and we'll talk about who and how that specifically impacts this game in a little bit. Now, the run game for Denver is honestly where this kind of gets interesting. From the outside looking in, a quick glance, you'd be like, wow, this is going to be a Denver team that should be able to run all over the Vegas Raiders, right? Denver right now, 7th in rushing yards per game, 5th in yards per carry. This is a Raiders team that's allowing, 109.4, that's 16th in the league in terms of rushing yards per game. Our matchup analyzer even has J.K. Dobbins a fairly easy matchup, and you can see 19th from a DVOA perspective on the ground defense for the Raiders. But I will say, it is worth noting, 6th in rush yards per carry. That's pretty good from this Raider side of things. And Denver's going to run a lot of the man and duo run scheme. I think that's super important here because coincidentally, weirdly enough, whatever you want to call it, this Raiders defense is actually pretty good against that specific run team and scheme, I should say. 8th fewest yards per carry, 9th best DVOA, 6th best success rate, 3rd best yards before contact. Weirdly enough, the 4th worst DVOA, which is interesting, but still, for the most part, some of these advanced numbers look pretty damn good. And the Broncos, they've had some big run games this year, right? All against teams that struggled against the man duo scheme. The Raiders aren't one of those teams. The Giants, worst in the league in terms of the man scheme. Dallas, 4th worst. Cincinnati, 9th worst. Those are the 3 biggest rushing games J.K. Dobbins and the Denver run attack have had this season. So weirdly enough, I do think that the Raiders could hold up their end of the defensive bargain against the run. But again, we shall see. They're still not a very good defense. That is I guess I'm stretching a little bit here, right? But I do think that if there's any part that they might be okay in, it is the run game. I think Bo Nix, full speed ahead should look pretty good in this game. Now, before we do dive into the Raiders offense, I want to talk to you guys about Epic Fantasy. If you've not checked them out yet, you are honestly missing out on one of the most innovative and fun and just best DFS apps out there. Use the code GUYBOSSON and the link in the description as well as the pinned comment. You'll get a first deposit match up to $50. But right now, what I think is actually one of the coolest things that they're doing, they're offering this to everybody, guys. It's called Copy Cash. It just launched. If you post your, slip entry on Twitter, on Instagram, anywhere, that link, if people do copy that and go in and copy your lineup based on that link, you will get 25 cents every single time someone copies your lineup. So you can make these plays that you like, share them with your buddies, share them with your friends, your family, your ex-girlfriend. Maybe she'll jump on there, right? Maybe your grandma's ex-boyfriend from high school. Get them all in there, guys. 25 cents each and every time someone copies your lineup. I think it's a really, really cool thing that they are doing. And we have a lineup that we'll share with you at the end of the video. Kind of relates to the player props that we like. And I'll have that link down in the pinned comment as well for you guys to be able to copy if you do choose. But go ahead and again, check out Epic. Link down below in the description as well as the pinned comment. Let's jump back into this game here because we have the whole other side of the ball to talk about, right? Raiders offense versus this Denver defense, and this Denver defense is legit, right? 4th in points per game, 6th against the pass, 8th against the rush, 4th in terms of rushing yards per carry, and the number 1 red zone defense. Some big things going on here. From a DVOA perspective, 4th overall, 6th against the pass, and 3rd against the rush. Obviously a very good defense like we mentioned, but how does that impact this Raiders team? Because Geno Smith ain't all that great, or I guess I should say the Raiders offense hasn't been all that great, right? Now, I will say Pat Surtain, we mentioned at the top of the video, super important to talk about this, because on the season, Denver plays a ton of man, right? A ton of man, 2nd most in the entire league. But last week with no Pat Surtain, they actually were a bottom 10 team in frequency when it came to man, and obviously a top 10 when it came to zone. They changed their defense entirely when he's not out there. And I guess that makes sense. One of the best man-to-man corners in the league. He's not in there. Why would you stick to man? You could be, susceptible to some entry wounds there. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, we want to keep an eye on the Pat Surtain news, because it's going to drastically impact how they play. Now, from a Geno Smith front, I will say some of his numbers do look better against the man, right? Yards per attempt, interception rate, DVOA, and EPA, expected points added. So maybe he is hoping Pat Surtain plays, right? Because he's better at man, and that's a big scheme. But on the pressure front of things, not all that great. Can you believe this number is that big? Minus 119.8% in terms of DVOA versus pressure. And he's going to get a decent amount of pressure, right, from this Denver squad. Now, we did mention Jakobi Meyers being traded, and I think that that's a big point as well, and it kind of ties into this Pat Surtain monitoring of the injury, because Brock Bowers is and was with Jakobi Meyers there the number 1 target, but he's definitely, like, by bar none, the number 1 target now with Jakobi Meyers out of the picture. And Brock Bowers is targeted much more heavily, catches the ball more, and has more yards per game against man this year, and it's like a 10 yards per game difference than zone, which is really big. So in a weird way, again, I'll say it, it's kind of weird. I'll sound the psycho alert alarm on Geno's behalf. Geno Smith might be hoping Pat Surtain plays, just so that, the Denver Broncos run a lot of man. But either way, that pressure is still like numero uno to me. I don't think that, Geno Smith's going to be in the best situation, whether it's zone or man, because of the pressure. And I do think that this is a Raiders team that will allow a decent amount of pressure when presented that, right? So I don't love Geno Smith's spot here. I don't mind the idea of him having a lot of quantity, just because that spread's big. Denver may be able to run away with it. We'll talk about that when we get to the spread portion of the video. But quality-wise, not exactly, a green light in terms of my mind. Now, the run game. Now, we know Ashton Jeanty is very good, right? But he hasn't really looked all that great to start his NFL career. 4th worst rushing team in terms of yards per game. And from a DVOA perspective, yeah, check it out. Like, they're literally dead last in the entire league here, 32nd offensively in terms of a run. And again, we mentioned how good Denver's run defense is, and we just talked about their defense overall, right? How is Ashton Jeanty going to be in this game? Because if they want to keep this game close, you're going to need him to do something, because, again, no Jakobi Meyers. Now it's what? Brock Bowers, Geno Smith, Trey Tucker, I guess. Like, they need to establish some sort of a run game. And you know what? It may be a stretch, but it's worth noting that Las Vegas does run the 4th most inside zone runs. Denver, as good as their run defense is, guess what? Middle of the pack team in terms of yards per carry against the inside zone, 8th worst EPA per attempt, 5th worst DVOA, 8th worst success rate, 7th worst yards before contact. So again, it may be a stretch, I may be grasping here, but could Jeanty actually get going here? Could that help the Raiders move the ball down the field? They're not exactly, now we kind of talked about this, how, Dallas plays a lot of zone, but I did say at the end of the video, I was like, they do play a lot of zone. Jacoby Brissett struggles against zone versus man, right? In that last Monday Night Football breakdown that we called so clearly. But what I will say is Dallas's zone defense stinks, even though they run a ton of it, right? It's kind of the same thing with the Raiders' run offense. Though they run a ton of inside zone, they kind of stink at it. So it is a little, like I said, a little bit of a stretch. But I will say, and let's stretch these things out, no pulled muscles today, Indianapolis, the Giants, the Jets are 3 of the 4 teams that had their RB1 go for 60 or more yards against this Denver squad. What do they all have in common? They're all towards the top of the league in terms of inside zone frequency. So maybe there is a little bit of a void or a little bit of a soft spot in the Denver defense when it comes to the inside zone. So I do think that Jeanty It could be a buy low spot for him. His rushing yards line is, I think, at like 54.5, 55.5 right now. He may be able to get things going. I'm almost willing, if I were a betting man, which obviously I am, I'm willing to bet that he might have a decent enough game here. So we'll talk about Genty a little bit more when we get to the player props, but let's talk about our spread prediction, our total prediction here. It's about time we do that, right? Bo Nix is 2-0 both straight up and against the number against this Raiders squad since being in the league. Now they're at home. They're the far better team. I think the Raiders can be competitive here, but by the end of the game, I just think it's somewhat of a beatdown, right? I mentioned how this is the best red zone defense in the league in the Raiders. It's also the 8th best offense in terms of the Broncos. The 8th best offense. Now, the Raiders, bottom half of the league in terms of defensive red zone, and then offensive, they're like 3rd or 4th worst. That's going to matter to me towards the end of the game. So while this game may stay somewhat competitive, eventually I think the cream will rise to the top. So I do lean Broncos minus 9.5. I'll tell you right now, I'll be the first one to admit, that's an efficient line. Like, I could see the Broncos winning by 9 or 10 points, that type of a thing, right? So I'm not trying to sit here and say it's an absolute lock. If someone's on the Raiders in this game, it doesn't surprise me, but I do think that they have a lot more that could go wrong. Whereas, like I said, I like Bo Nix in this situation. And when you like Bo Nix for this Broncos team, good things can happen with some of the weapons that he has, right? Cortland Sutton, Troy Franklin, who's emerged. I mean, even Marvin Mims, like some of these guys are better than the receiving core that, now obviously Geno Smith has to deal with. Obviously Brock Bowers is very, very good, but then who? So I do think the cream will rise to the top. Give me the Denver Broncos minus 9.5. I want to be transparent and tell you guys, I don't think that's going to be a final play because it is a big enough number. What does have a chance of being a final play is my look on the total here. Now it's sitting at 42.5. I like the idea of an over, especially because if Denver's going to control this game, which by all means should be the case at a 9.5 point favorite at home. But what did I say their best spot in terms of offensive looks was, right? Bo Nix and the quarterback in the passing game. So if they're going to control this game but move the ball via passes, I kind of like the over. I'm giving a lot of credit and a lot of hope and a leash out to Geno against man defense, even with Surtain if he plays out there, but also an even bigger leash out to Ashton Genty to perhaps perform well and play fairly well, rush for 60 plus yards and get his team going. But even if they don't, what if they go out there and score 17 points for us, right? That's about what the Denver Broncos are averaging. I think that could be enough for this Denver team to utilize, right? So if we had, 42.5 minus 17, easy math there. I think the Broncos have to score 26, 27 points. Yeah, 25.5. So they'd score 26 points and we'd be looking at an over. I think there's more ways to get to an over than an under in this one, even with arguably the best defense in the league playing here. Now let's go ahead and dive into the player prop portion of the show. Now we're over on Outlier for this. If you guys want access to the tool that I'm about to show you, check out the link down in the description as well as the pinned comment. 7-day free trial for what I would argue is the best sports research tool out there. Obviously the dashboard that you guys saw earlier right here, I would argue that that's one of the best tools out there as well. You have our Guy Boston Sports NFL dashboard, which GuyBostonSports.com, NFL dashboard, and Outlier. Man, you are cooking with gas. Let's dive into Outlier here and take a peek at some of the player props that we are liking. First off, we'll take a peek at Ashton Genty. I'd already mentioned it, but we didn't talk about this. I don't mind him in the passing game. Now, this is obviously a Denver team that's very good against the pass, but they do drop off a little bit against the running back. And for 15.5, I believe we got it earlier at plus 100, which is nice because everywhere else it's pretty juiced. Still decent enough at minus 110 over on MGM, but 47 yards last game on 5 receptions. He got targeted 5 times, but even check this out. Like Genty, sneaky getting a decent amount of targets, right? He's 4th there. You're taking out Jacoby Myers. Now it's Trey Tucker, Brock Bowers, Ashton Genty. He's the number 3 targeted guy in this season now with Jacoby Myers gone. So I do like the idea of some check downs here. 16 yards could literally be like one catch from him. Do I think that's going to be the case? Not so much, but look at this. His longest catch, 9.5. Like what if he catches the ball twice, right around 9 yards each? We're already over that 16. So I do like the spot for him in the receiving game. I also like him in the rushing attack here. Now, getting this a little bit earlier, we saw 54.5, which I do believe is still available out there. Yeah, 54.5. You look at him on the season, and it's like, okay, not too great. He has averaged 60.8 yards per game. And yes, Denver's very, very good. But like I mentioned, specifically the inside zone is where I expect him to get some of these carries. And, well, guess what? That's a spot that's a little bit weak for Denver. In another way of kind of looking at this too, so 14.5 is his rushing yards or his rushing attempts line. And you could see juiced to the over. So if we assume he's going to go out there and get 15 carries, right, which I would assume that he would in a sense, especially in a game in which maybe that's a weakness of this Denver squad, which he's also by far and away their number one back. All he would need to do is average what, like 3.5 yards per carry to be able to hit 55 yards in that. This season he's averaging 3.9. So if he goes out there and just does his average and the odds makers are right about that 14.5 line, we do have an over on our hands. So yes, it's a little crazy, but I do like the idea of Ashton Jeanty potentially getting some things going here. 54.5 is a very, very low line for a guy of that magnitude and that talent. I know Denver's very, very good, but like I mentioned, some of those other guys that went off against this team, whether it was, Breece Hall or Jonathan Taylor, I'm not saying that Ashton Jeanty is necessarily in their category yet, but those are guys that run the inside zone a ton, not necessarily behind the best offensive line, especially Breece Hall, right? Let's move on to another player. So Jeanty over in both rushing and receiving. Bo Nix, I already said I think this Denver team, the ball's going to be in his hand when it comes to how well they perform. I like his over 1.5 passing touchdowns. I also don't mind his passing yards. Now, you're going to get this at 209.5 right now. Has he been all that tremendous to this line? No. But last time he played this Raiders team, he went for 273. And again, I'm going to say that this is a spot in which he's going to be the reason they win or lose. I don't think it's going to be the ground game. And, obviously you might be thinking, okay, well, if they're winning by a lot, they're going to have to run. I still think even if they're winning by a lot, this Raiders team may play decent defense on the ground. So I like Bo Nix over 209.5. I like his over 1.5 passing touchdowns. And I would also take a peek at his completions. Right now, you can get it at 20.5. He's done it in 5 of the 9 games so far this year. Check it out at home. 3 of 4. The only one he didn't, they were beaten down on Dallas, and they didn't even need to throw the ball a ton. Look at 71, 80, 76 for his passing attempts so far at home. 57. It dropped by like 15 to 20 when going up against Dallas because they were winning by so much. So I really don't mind Bo Nix from an attempts standpoint either. Now, if he's got or completions. Now, if he's going to be throwing the ball to who? Courtland Sutton is the guy that I like this week. He's by far the out wide receiver one for this squad. I know Troy Franklin has kind of come on and been pretty damn good. Like even looking at this, Troy Franklin's taken over Courtland Sutton from a perspective of targets and even red zone targets. But I do like the idea of the situation here for Courtland Sutton. I mean, he's going up against a team that he's already, last time he played had 97 yards against. It correlates to my Bo Nix love in this game. And again, he's the out wide target. I'd given that little tidbit earlier that, yes, he likes to target out wide. The Raiders stink at covering out wide. So I like him. From a touchdown perspective, I mean, you do have some value. If you can get, by the time you're watching this, if you can get plus 170 or beyond for a Courtland Sutton tutty, I like that. Again, it correlates to Bo Nix. I like him to throw for 2 touchdowns. Courtland Sutton, especially if you're beating the market by 20 cents here on anywhere in terms of EV, I do think that Sutton could be a good look from a touchdown score perspective. And let's see, are his receptions still plus money? If they are, yes, I don't mind that either. Last time he played Las Vegas, he had 8. Now, he has been up and down to this line this season, but he still hit it in 5 of 9 games. At home, 3 of 4. And again, Dallas was the game he didn't. So I do think that we have a lot of strong correlated factors here, whether, the way we see the game going. If it doesn't go according to plan, then yeah, no kidding. Maybe, the Raiders blow them out. Bo Nix probably will still be passing the ball a lot. Maybe it does correlate to some success, but not exactly the way that we saw it going, right? But guys, I did say that I had an epic entry, and it is epic, that I wanted to share with you now that we have gone through our player props. These are kind of a morphed version of what we're going to be rolling with here. So Ashton Jeanty, 75.5 rushing plus receiving. It's just combining the 2 props that we like. Bo Nix, we talked about it, over 20.5 pass completions. And then Sutton, because it's a nice multiplier over on Epic. And again, this is a 3-man entry and a 4x our payout. Damn near, right? 3.96. Courtland Sutton, 4.5 receptions. He needs to go for 5. So I really do like the spot there. If this does hit, I'll split up some of the winnings and give it out to people on my Instagram. All you have to do is go follow me there. It's at EvPicks, EVPI. CKZ. Why was that harder than it needed to be? Ev Picks. It'll be popping up here right in a second. EVPICKZ on Instagram. All you have to do, follow me and DM me saying I'm here for the Raiders in Denver giveaway or the epic giveaway, something along those lines, and you are entered. Again, if this hits, I'm not taking any of the winnings myself. I'll split it up and give it to a few different people, maybe like, 3 people at $30 a piece or something like that, right? But guys, simple as that. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. Hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Really do appreciate it. And again, let me know all of your favorite plays down in the comments. I know this is a long video, but we're standing our ground. We get comments all the time being like, why is the video so long and all that? Like I tell you guys, I love talking about sports. Love doing what I do. You guys are absolutely awesome. I love the community we're building. If I feel like there is a lot to talk about or a lot of information to get to, I like the idea of taking our time and doing it right versus just trying to fly through to appease the loud minority. You know what I mean? But anyways, that's a conversation for another day. Good luck in this game. I'll catch you guys in the next one, all right? Peace out.